what are the main reasons behind the growing popularity of white rooftops in Indian cities?
So it's pretty simple that we have a lot of heat now, and heat incidences have been growing in the past few years or decade, if you can say. And white roof is a very easy form to be able to reflect the light that's following on the roof. Now, a lot of the heat that comes into the building actually comes from the top roof. And you would have noticed that in a lot of cases, it is the top floor which is gets the heated up the most. And the reason is that the heat is coming from the top surface because, as you can imagine, it's summers, peak summers, the sunlight might be falling directly on the roof, and this heat would be getting transferred inside. So, what we want is that, of course, heat will fall, but we want that a lot of this heat that falls on it gets reflected back, which is why you need the white roof or cool roof, as we may call it.
Hmm. And so it's just that they just use white paint, or what kind of solution are they are involved in this white paint that they use to uh, paint the rooftop? We would want to know exactly what chemicals are used, because somebody would want to know, why are you using white and not red and not yellow or other colors, and what content
Okay,
does it contain?
so Okay. So white would just literally mean that it would reflect a lot more light than any other color. Like we see color because the when the white light falls on it, then you're able to then that particular color absorbs all the lights, and if it's reflecting, then we see red or yellow or whatever. White would be the color that's reflecting most amount of light, which is not to say that if I use any kind of white paint, the white paints in themselves would have a lot of different values of reflection. Some would reflect more, some would reflect less. And there is also something called reflectivity of the material itself. So a simple white paint will be better than not putting a white paint. But in the white paint, there are many different kind of materials that can actually, there are different kinds of.
Working in the building sector, have we done a thorough research to understand how this wide rooftop has helped in reducing urban heat and energy efficiency in the cities where we have this method being implemented? Because we would want to know exactly how it has reduced urban heat.
Right. So the white roof would actually help in multiple ways. I will start with the city-wide thing, which is that there is a lot of direct heat which is falling on the ground or on the surface of the earth. Now, if we build something with a dark concrete, let's say dark concrete material, it would be able to it will absorb that heat which is falling in the daytime, and it will give that heat back at the nighttime, because of which there is something called urban heat island effect is happening, which means the temperature within the city is higher than the temperature in rural areas surrounding the city. Why is that happening? Because a lot of heat is getting trapped, and construction materials are a major reason why it's getting trapped. Now, if I use a white roof, or if I use something like a green roof, which is made with plantation, then I'm able to reduce the amount of sunlight that is falling and getting absorbed by the concrete or other materials that are at the top of that building. Right? So imagine that on a city scale, I am reducing the amount of heat getting absorbed on the surfaces of the building, on the top floor surfaces of the building. And this is what I want to do. Now, one thing is that the more the heat gets reflected and does not get absorbed by the buildings, then the whole city is a little more comfortable because you have not taken that heat in the first place. You've not absorbed the heat. Well, I mean, the research says that on the top floor, a white roof can have an effect of about 2 to 5 degrees centigrade on the top floor if we are using the white roof. So you can imagine 2 to 5 degrees centigrade. I mean, I'm just giving one example that imagine the room is at 35 degrees centigrade. Imagine if I'm able to bring it down by 5 degrees centigrade, it could mean that I don't require air conditioning, right? So it's going to be a much big help in.
Yes, the issue of um, electricity consumption and then cooling cost for household. What are
Okay,
the impacts?
okay. So, all right. So, well, basically, a cool roof can provide a difference of about 2 to 5 degrees centigrade inside the top floor, on the top floor. And that's actually significant because if you imagine that if you're doing a 5 degree centigrade difference, let's say the temperature is 34 degree, if you are able to bring it down by 4 or 5 degrees centigrade, we're talking about a temperature which is less than 30 degree. And you can imagine that that might mean that the user is comfortable and doesn't really need air conditioning in the first place. So that in itself can reduce or eliminate the air conditioning. On the other scenario, you might say that, you know, I am not, even if I'm using air conditioning, a 5 degree centigrade is a huge difference in terms of how much electricity I will be able to save. Even if I'm using air conditioning, my air conditioning has to work less and consume less amount of electricity. You know, it has to cool down temperature by a little less degree centigrade, which makes it much easier and which gives you energy consumption saving. In terms of the government policies, there have been government policies on the state level. Let's say Telangana is a state, and they have come out with the Telangana cool roof policy, where they have actually tried to do something like, very recently the energy conservation and sustainability building code came out. Very recently, just about 3 months ago, this code came out, and that also promotes the implementation of cool roofs inside our buildings. So right now it has just come out, which is the energy conservation sustainable building code, which is applicable for all commercial buildings above a certain size in the country. Then they will be adopted by, I said, I mean, there is a national level code that comes out, and then it has to be taken up by every single state. So the state, different portions of India, like you went to Rajasthan, that needs to also adopt that code and then implement it into their building. But the first step is done. The first step is that nationally we have now recognized this need and said all commercial buildings above a certain size have to actually start implementing this on their building.
Hmm. So finally, what challenges or limitation exist in implementing white rooftop solution on large scales? So if you can take the last question, the
Yeah.
last question again.
Yeah, I was just saying that since the National Energy Conservation Building Code has just adopted it, we will start seeing more products coming up in the market, which will be probably when the
Sagit, can you continue, please?
yeah, I'm done sort of saying that the National Building
Yes. So
Energy Conservation Building Code has just about come up with this. And once it gets implemented, you would see a better, I mean, once it gets adopted by different states and is becomes mandatory for many buildings to do, that's when you will see a lot more products coming up. Perhaps the market opening up, and I'm guessing also these paints becoming cheaper, these surfaces becoming cheaper, and therefore a lot more people will adopt it, I guess.
yes, so we're looking at. I was talking about the challenges or limitations in implementing a white rooftop, solution in India? What are some of the challenges or limitations that you have observed?
I mean, as I said, one of the things is that it needs to be cleaned very frequently, because if there is dust, then the effectiveness becomes less, because dust might be of a different color. The reflectivity will change. So that's one issue that needs to be sorted out. And I said, uh, you know, implementation, we will just really recently and become mandatory. So let's see how this takes us forward.
Hmm.
I mean, the first step really has to be that, I'm not talking to 100 people and saying, look, you should do it. I'm saying the code asks you to do it. Once the code asks you to do it, you don't have a choice but to mandatorily apply these principles.
Hmm.
So I think the first very big and very good step has already been done. In Africa, I believe Rwanda is one country which had actually implemented this as well. The cool roof policy, I believe, was it called? They also tried to implement that a lot of buildings will have the white roof. So that's also one other place I know has implemented such a thing.
Hmm. But do we have numbers? Have we been able to know how many people in India have done this? Have we? Do we have numbers?
No, we don't have direct numbers like that right now.
Okay, thank you so much.